Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. We are on our 70th episode today, which is pretty exciting. My name's Radha Priti, and I'm here with a group of seekers. We're reading through the Bhagavad Gita, and today we're on text 21. And I think we might just do one text again today. We've been in this kind of mode where we've just been doing one text each day, but these texts are so full of nectar, so much that we can learn from them and apply to our lives that really just wanted to take the time to kind of let them seep in. But before I start, I do want to mention registration for our fall retreat, the Gita in Action retreat at New Vrindavan in West Virginia, is open. And that's going to be September 5th through the 7th. Vedasar in Atlanta. We'll be doing it together, Vedasar and I. And it will be a lot of fun. It will be a lot of fun. It'll be a lot of time for us to connect in person. And we'll be doing all the things. We'll be doing kirtan. Veda's going to do a fire ceremony with us. We'll have a nice bonfire one night. We'll have a lot of wisdom talks, a lot of time for us to just kind of do what we do here and just open our hearts and try to make these spiritual practices and principles real. So that's what we'll be doing. Please come. Registration is on the New Vrindavan website, so you can just go to the New Vrindavan website. It's also in my link tree on my bio in my Instagram. You can also just message me if you want a link and none of that works for you. So anyway, or you can also email seekersquest108@gmail.com. So please come. It's going to be great. And if you need a discount, let me know. There is an early bird discount. You can use the promo code early bird. I think we'll be running that through May. So if you want to come, sign up now. And also, if you're flying in and you need rides from the airport, or just reach out, and I try to help people coordinate with that. So anyway, okay, here we go. Text 21, chapter 5, text 21. And does somebody want to volunteer to read for us today? It's just one verse. Maybe Stella, can you just read the one verse for us? Is that okay? Okay, great. And today,
Yes.
thank you. And today we're going to explore a deep and important teaching from this verse. Krishna is going to talk about the fleeting nature of sense pleasures and how wise people don't get swept away by them. So it's a powerful reminder that while material pleasures may seem enticing, they ultimately don't provide lasting fulfillment. And in fact, they can often lead to more suffering than joy. So we're going to dive into how these temporary pleasures work and how they keep us trapped in these cycles of craving and disappointment. And we're going to talk about how, by recognizing the limited nature of sense enjoyment, we can begin to transcend them and find a more deeper and more lasting joy that comes from within. And we'll talk about lots of relevant examples in all of our own lives and how we deal with those. So with that, oh, you know what? I think I said 521. It's 522. I'm sorry, I misspoke. I think. Yes. Isn't that's where we are, right? We're not at 521. We did 521 last time. Okay,
Yeah.
522. Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, I'll share my screen and we'll go with that.
Okay. Text 22. An intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery, which are due to contact with the material senses, O son of Kunti. Such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them.
Very nice. Thank you. So, this is a common theme that we cover a lot. When there's contact with the sense objects, like the tongue is tasting delicious food or the eyes are seeing something beautiful, there may be a moment of pleasure, but it's ultimately accompanied by misery, which, it's kind of, people can kind of say like that sounds kind of bleak, like that sounds kind of sad. And, it is on one hand, But on the other, it's also just reality. This is just the reality of material existence. This is how, again, the Gita gives us like a guidebook of this material existence, our mind body vehicle, and how we can, navigate within the material existence in our mind body vehicle, and ultimately transcend it. And so this is just part of it. The nature of this material existence is that it's temporary and the experience fades. Whatever pleasure we're getting, it's fades. And when that happens, that often comes with craving for more, attachment to what was, or disappointment to losing it. And the fleeting nature of sense enjoyment is what makes it a source of suffering in the long run. So when we seek sense pleasure, it usually plays out in one of three ways. And we're going to talk these three ways we're going to talk about a couple times today, and I'll even give you a little acronym to remember them. So the first is that it's unattainable. When we're seeking sense pleasure and we just can't get it. This creates craving and frustration. Like you might long for the perfect romantic partner, the kind that you see in movies or on social media. But then finding someone who fits that ideal may just be impossible. And that longing becomes like a source of anxiety and self-doubt. So that's the first way that this plays out, is it's unattainable. We can't even get what we want. The second way that it plays out is it's attainable. We can get it, but then we learn that it's not as satisfying as we had imagined, as it was in our head. So maybe we find that someone perfect who seems to check all the boxes, but then once we're in that relationship, we realize it's not really the constant bliss that we expected. And the third way, so the first is it's unattainable. The second is that it's attainable, but it's not as good as we thought it would be. And the last way is it's enjoyable, but it doesn't last. And so even if the relationship is loving and fulfilling, the emotional highs come and go. Life brings challenges. People change. That initial rush fades. And that pleasure that you once felt so intensely isn't always there. So, and ultimately, no relationship can escape the influence of time and mortality. That's, again, just the reality of this material existence. So these are the three ways of which it can go when we try to enjoy sense pleasures. Ultimately, whatever way it goes, we get misery. So in this, he isn't saying relationships or pleasures are bad. He's just saying that they're limited. If we expect them to provide lasting happiness, we'll always be disappointed. But when we center our lives around spiritual connection, when God is at the heart of our relationship, we'll access something much deeper and much more enduring. So the last verse that we talked about how those who are spiritually connected enjoy unlimited happiness from within. So taken together, these two verses remind us that true wisdom means seeing how limited sense pleasure really is. It's limited. Our capacity to enjoy is limited due to those three reasons. And so therefore, choosing to aim higher in our search for fulfillment is what we need to do. We can think of it like sense pleasure is like a disappointing sandwich. Like we might imagine that there's something really delicious in the middle of the sandwich. So even if the two pieces of bread are like dry and unappetizing, we think, well, at least I'll enjoy the filling. That's what we're really looking forward to. So we tolerate the bland outer parts, hoping that taste in the center will make it worth it. But then what happens when we try this disappointing sandwich? We bite into it and we realize that even the middle isn't even that good. Like it's not what we were expecting. And now we're stuck with this whole dry, unsatisfying experience. So in this analogy, the two slices of bread represent hankering and lamentation. And then that thin filling in the middle is that fleeting pleasure. So before we get the object of our desire, the mind is full of craving, right? That the hankering, it creates restlessness, even maybe like misery. We want it so bad, that outer layer of the sandwich, the hankering. We think we won't even be okay until we get it. It's like torment, we're so focused on it. And then finally we get the thing we wanted and we feel a little bit of pleasure. We experience that middle feeling. But a lot of times too, like what we often call pleasure is really just a temporary release from the craving because we've kind of got through that layer. So now the craving is like not gripping us so tightly. So we feel some pleasure. It's a momentary relief. It's not true fulfillment, it's a momentary relief. But then before we know it, the pleasure's gone. And then what's left is that other side of the sandwich, that lamentation. Like maybe the experience ended too quickly. Maybe it didn't meet our expectations, right? Or maybe now we're just looking for the next thing to fill the gap. So this is the sandwich example is an example of how this sense pleasure kind of works within us when we're seeking pleasure solely from what we can experience in this material world through our senses. Naturally, they have a beginning and an end. This is what Krishna says. They have a beginning and the end, and the wise don't delight in them. And in this verse, he says, the wise don't delight in them because this verse translates as wombs of misery. Wombs of misery, which is kind of a striking image. The womb holds something hidden, like an embryo, like a child, something not yet visible. So in the same way, sense pleasure may seem harmless or even delightful at first. But Krishna and Srila Prabhupada in his purport warn us that this misery is already growing within us. So as Prabhupada puts it, he says, these pleasures are pregnant with misery. So that means that the suffering is built in to the experience. The suffering's built into the experience. It just hasn't fully emerged yet. So once that pregnancy is there, the delivery of pain is inevitable. So if you're going through something right now, something that you thought was going to bring you a lot of joy and it's just not working out that way. Good news for you, it's built that way. That's the way this material existence is built. Right? Nothing's wrong with you. Right? This is the way it's built. This sense enjoyment is a womb of misery. It is the delivery of pain is inevitable. But this isn't about rejecting pleasure or beauty. It's about seeing things as they are. That's what we really need to get out of this. It's not about saying, oh, you have a negative take on the world, or it's not about that at all. This is just the reality. It's about seeing things as they are. There's nothing wrong with enjoying connection or comfort or moments of joy. But when we build our happiness solely on these fleeting external pleasures, we're going to end up stuck in that cycle of craving and disappointment, that sandwich, right? That craving a little bit of joy, which is like a relief, for a relief from the craving, and then disappointment on the backside that it's over. This is the cycle of this sense enjoyment. This is the reality. And that's okay. Once we can see it for what it is, we can better navigate and manage, our expectations and our connection accordingly. And that's what the Gita is inviting us to do, is to connect to something deeper. Connect to a steady joy, an inner joy, not one that's born of desire, not one that's dependent on external circumstances, one that's a happiness that's rooted in spiritual connection and self-awareness, because that's where the real fulfillment lives. If we build our castle on a foundation of sand, it's surely going to fall. It's surely going to fall, and we're going to get stuck in that cycle of craving, a little bit of pleasure, disappointment. That's going to be like the unending cycle of this building that we're going to do. It's just going to crumble. But if we build on something much deeper, and we connect everything to that, it will have something substantial that is unshakable. So next time you find yourself intensely craving something, whether it's a treat, a new purchase, you want to buy something, someone's attention, maybe some super cool experience, pause and observe the full sandwich. The full sandwich. Ask yourself, am I being pulled by hankering? What will this actually feel like once I have it? And how will I feel once it's over? And again, this kind of honest reflection doesn't mean that we stop enjoying life. It just means that we stop chasing mirages and we start anchoring ourselves in something greater. And that's what the Gita teaches us. This true happiness isn't found in what comes and goes, it's found in what lasts. And that lasting fulfillment begins when we turn inward and upward, connecting with the source of all joy, God. Right? When one understands that there's misery that will come sooner or later, when we put all of our eggs in the basket of sense gratification, then they'll decide not to get involved. They'll slowly pull out of that avenue for enjoyment because they'll see and they'll understand with both their experience and their intelligence that this cycle of how it works, right? And that it eventually will lead to some form of misery, and it just won't be worth it anymore. The investment, the return on investment is just not worth it anymore because they've experienced that and they've studied this philosophy enough to understand that that's the nature of it. That's the way that it works, and they won't keep putting coins in a broken vending machine, hoping that, okay, that didn't work this time. I didn't experience exactly what I wanted. Okay, I'm going to try it this way. I'm going to do it this way. At some point we have to understand, this is just the way that the vending machine is working. It's not that, we can try to manipulate all these different circumstances and get a different result. No, this is the way that it's working. There's going to be hankering. There's going to be some enjoyment. There's going to be lamentation. So if our happiness is solely tied to something material in that sense, that's what we're going to experience. And we're going to be on that roller coaster of highs and lows, of ups and downs. But when we begin to seek what the yogis experience, that real happiness within the self, because God delights in himself, and through that inner joy, he becomes the source of joy for others. So that when we connect with him, when we turn inward and upward, we too tap into that steady, unshakable joy that no external pleasure can match. So that's what we need to do here. This is what we need to take some of our time every day and commit to this practice, because this is what's steady. This is what's enduring. The other things, in our lives ideally can support that practice. That's the rightful way for them to be situated. If they're situated completely to make us happy, independent and completely independent of source, then we're going to get subjected to this cycle of hankering, pleasure, lamentation. Does anybody want to share anything before we move on? Okay, move on. So that brings us to our next point, is that we need to use our intelligence to discern what actually serves us and what doesn't. So suppose that there's a river that tends to overflow unpredictably, and it floods all the nearby areas. So to protect the surrounding land, we'd build a barrier along the riverbank. So similarly, in the river of our consciousness, unhealthy impulses sometimes rise like floods, sweeping us towards behaviors that degrade us or just pull us away from who we want to be. Does that ever happen to anybody? Every time I think of this, I think of like family holidays, right? It's like, it just pulls you down to a place you don't want to be. These degraded behaviors that just aren't in line with your highest self. So to protect ourselves, we need barriers. So our conscious is meant to serve as one of those natural barriers. It gives us this emotional pinch, like a subtle inner signal when we start heading in a direction that's not right for us. So this little pinch, it might show up as guilt, when we want to reach for that third piece of cake. But it can also take the form of like unease, right? Or internal conflict, just a moment of hesitation. Like you might feel uneasy about gossiping, or conflicted when an opportunity doesn't align with your values. Or maybe you pause right before overindulging because in something, like, again, that cake, that third piece of cake, because you know that it won't serve you in the long run. So our conscious, it doesn't only warn us when we've gone astray, but it also supports us when we're doing something positive. And we've all probably felt that, right? Like when we act in alignment with our values or we make a choice that helps us grow, our conscious gives us kind of like a little pat on the back, like kind of an inner encouragement. You might feel like a quiet sense of peace after helping someone, or a warm feeling when you stick to your values in a difficult situation. We all know what that feels like when everything just feels aligned. Even if you have to do something difficult, you feel like, okay, that was difficult, but that was necessary, and you feel very aligned, like inner harmony, inner confidence. So these positive signals guide us forward, right? They reaffirm us that we're on the right path. However, we also have to understand that sometimes our conscious doesn't function as it should. So because our conscious can be a product of what we've absorbed around us, what we've been surrounded by. If we've been surrounded by, unhealthy influences through our culture, our social environment, the habits that we've developed over time, which most of us fall into that category. If we've been exposed to these things, this can dull our awareness until so that the things that should feel off no longer really trigger any inner warning. And again, this is a symptom of our mind-body vehicle. We like to believe that it's just like perfect and we've got it all figured out. But we should understand that we're just a product of our own conditioning. And even if you've done the best that you can, you're still going to have that vulnerability to be off a little bit. And that's again just the nature. So we need to understand this. When our conscious becomes desensitized, when it no longer acts as this reliable barrier, we need another form of inner guidance. And this is where we can use our intelligence. This is where our intelligence comes in. And this is what this verse says, that an intelligent person doesn't indulge in temporary pleasures, knowing that they ultimately lead to suffering. So this doesn't mean that you're not going to feel the pull, and sometimes you may even feel like this is perfectly fine. This is no problem, because your conditioning has told you that. But in those moments when that happens, we need to kind of turn on our next line of defense, which is our intelligence. And remember this acronym that I'm about to teach you. Remember this to remind ourselves of the reality of sense pleasure. And just like we need to keep our bodies fit with regular exercise, we also need to keep our intelligence fit with regular introspection. And that's what this acronym is. It's FIT, to keep our intelligence fit, FIT. And this is how we train our intelligence to recognize these traps. Okay. Are we ready for this acronym? We already went over these 3 reasons, but now we're plugging it into a nice little acronym so that we can remember it. So F is for futility. Okay, this is when we chase after something, thinking that it'll bring us lasting happiness, but it remains out of reach, no matter how hard we try. It's like constantly striving for something, but never quite getting there. Has that ever happened to anybody? Like, I think of me, maybe you want the approval of someone important. I think of my dad growing up. Maybe it's a parent, a boss, someone you admire, and you put all this effort. You work hard. You try to do everything right. I remember doing this as a kid, like every day, like, okay, maybe if I do just like this, my dad will want to hang out with me, right? But no matter what you do, it's never enough. You never get the recognition that you're after. Right? That's futility. It's chasing after something that always just seems out of reach, and it makes you feel drained and defeated. So that's the F, futility, for keeping our intelligence fit. Okay. I is for insubstantiality. Insubstantiality. Is that how you say it? Insubstantial. Think of insubstantial. This is when the pleasure or the validation that we get may feel good in the moment, but it doesn't really bring any lasting fulfillment. And we think it's going to fill us up, but then it just ends up feeling shallow. So maybe you spend all this time trying to win someone's approval, thinking it'll make everything better. But then when you finally get it, you start to maybe get to know the person a little bit better, and you think maybe their approval really wasn't worth that much. And this is, again, kind of my journey in getting approval from my dad. It's like you realize that their opinion isn't really based on anything that truly matters. It's like based off their own conditioning, their own kind of scars, right? It's not grounded in wisdom or values that you respect. And all of a sudden, it's like the praise that you spent your whole life working for doesn't feel as important as it once did. That's the insubstantial nature of sense pleasures. Like they might look good from a distance, but up close, they don't really give us what we need. And if you get stuck in this cycle, maybe you even realize, okay, maybe my dad's approval wasn't really what I needed anyway. But then you start looking for approval everywhere else, right? This is the vending machine where we just keep putting quarters in a broken vending machine because we don't really understand this cycle of sense gratification. When we're looking to fill our cup up by something in this material world, that cup is always going to be a little bit leaky. And we don't quite get that. So we just keep trying. We keep trying. And then maybe we think something's wrong with us. Right? The answer is no, it's not. You're just trying to fill up cups that have a bunch of holes in them. That's the nature of this material existence. Turn to something that's substantial, that's enduring. Turn to a cup that doesn't have the holes in it. And okay, so that's F, I. Now we're going to go to T. T is, can anybody guess what T is in this acronym?
Temporary?
Yeah, temporary. Thank you, Mariah. So this is when the pleasure that we experience is short-lived. Like even if we get what we wanted, it doesn't last, and we're left feeling unsatisfied once it fades away. For example, maybe someone praises you one day, but the next day they're moved on, changed their mind, focused on someone else, or worse, maybe you have a falling out and they're not even talking to you anymore. So what you worked so hard to get and maybe you got goes away. The high fades. And then you're left chasing that next burst of validation, just off to the next. Because you've developed this need inside yourself for that, to get that because you haven't sufficiently connected to something higher, such that you're getting your nourishment from that relationship. No, you're still kind of stuck in this mirage, seeking all of these things that don't exist and not really learning your lesson. So this is the temporary nature of sense pleasures. They come, they go, and we try to hold on to them, but it makes us it leaves us feeling like anxious or disappointed. So that's the acronym FIT. Futile, insubstantial, temporary. That's what happens when we chase, when we think that our happiness, our sole source of happiness exists inside of this world. And that's just the beginning of what happens. Usually these things will lead us into all kinds of unhealthy cycles. So when our consciousness isn't enough to guide us, which again happens because we're conditioned beings and most of us have been exposed to, some maybe unhealthy ways of being, we have to remember this. We have to remember that seeking enjoyment in this material world, it's going to either going to be futile. We can't get it. We want it. We can't get it. It's going to be insubstantial. We get it and it's not really as good as we thought. Or it's going to be temporary. Even if we get it and it's great, it's going to go away. So having this awareness, once again, doesn't mean that we stop enjoying life. It just means that we stop expecting lasting fulfillment, that things that are by nature fleeting. And if we can really understand this, it could relieve so much anxiety. We have so much anxiety around trying to hold on to things. We work so hard to make things just so perfect in our lives. It aligns, and then we're so afraid of losing it, right? But we have to understand that this is the nature of material existence. We're not the controllers. And to the degree that we can stop trying to be the enjoyers, right, we can actually experience real happiness and connection. But we're trying to move around in this maze without a roadmap, right? This maze of material existence without a roadmap, just using our own vantage point, which is limited because we're in this maze and there's all these high walls and we can't really see the whole picture. But we think that we can, and we're just trying to move around. And it's wait, just step back, consult the guidebook, understand, the creator that made this maze is giving us these instructions, telling us what to expect at every turn. And if we can start to tune into that and to direct our intelligence accordingly, we can actually get out of it. We can actually get out of it. But instead, we're so dang stubborn, just stumbling around in this maze, going round and round in circles, and we won't even stop and consult the map. Right? We won't even because we like to believe that we got it, that we know it. But it's telling us right here. It's telling us right here. We don't have to do that. We don't have to keep walking around in circles, experiencing this cycle of hankering, enjoyment, lamentation. No, we can get out of that. And this is how. This is what this is telling us. So whether our conscious is active and we feel that emotional pinch, or whether it's quiet, maybe we've been around, our conditioning is such that we don't even have that high level of conscious anymore. That's okay. Learn to use your intelligence. You're given a roadmap now. So wherever you are in this maze, that's okay. Even if you've got yourself wrapped up in so many circles that it's like, I am never going to get out. That's okay. Here's a roadmap. Use your intelligence. Build these inner barriers, whether you're using your conscious or your intelligence, build these inner barriers to keep you from getting swept away from these impulses that don't serve us, that make us keep taking that left turn over and over, and we're just continuing to go in circles. Use this roadmap to get out. Does anybody want to share anything? Okay. Just noticed my hand's up, which is weird. I don't know that my hand just might be up.
I have
Oh,
something.
great.
It really reminded me of, like, the billionaires today. They just want more tax cuts and more money, and it's like, well, you have more money than you could spend in a lifetime, and you're still not satisfied. You want more, and or they have it and it's not satisfying, so they want power, because we all think, oh, if I just had $1 billion, I would just live in the country and be happy, and just and they're not. I mean, like, they have $100 billion and they want more. And there was a great quote by, I think it was Rockefeller, when asked how much money is enough. And oh, it was Carnegie. My husband said it was Carnegie. Um, um, you know, how much money do you need? And he had so much. And his answer was, just a little bit more. It's like,
Yeah.
the money's not making you happy. Like, you keep getting more, and it's
Yeah. No, that is a perfect example, and it's exactly true. And our what we sometimes do, our default, I know my default, is to judge those people. They want
sure.
more. But if we can start seeing, that they're just in this maze going around in circles, maybe we can start developing some compassion,
Yes.
instead of, yeah, that's what
They're
I'm working
really
on anyway, because
they're
it's
really
so,
suffering.
it's suffering. Yeah. And then we also sometimes, the other thing I like to do is say, I'm so far away from that. Because that's like such an obvious, some of these, like some of these things are so extreme. It's very obvious to say, oh, no, that's not me. But the reality is, on some level, all of us do get pulled into this,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know? Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Really nice example.
I'm reflecting on this class a lot today, and just yesterday I was reading in Bhagavad Gita Chapter 2, and in the purport of text 6, there's a line, and I should just get my Gita out and read it. But in the purport, it said, once we stop engaging in sense gratification, we can actually, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, we can actually receive liberation, because we actually start to obtain knowledge and devotion, right? So I had this deeper realization when I read that. I was like, oh, like once we stop this hankering and lamenting or feeding the senses, like once we stop realizing that doesn't bring us satisfaction or enjoyment, and we pause and we awaken our real knowledge and our devotion to the Lord, liberation comes. All knowledge will come because we can't get it ourselves, right? Like we can't, there's nothing that we can really grasp for out there to receive the knowledge and to receive devotion for love. We have to just do the devotion to Krishna, and then Krishna, who is our source, who we are part and parcel of, automatically just gives you real spiritual knowledge and everything and liberation. He gives you everything. He gives you the joy. He gives you the happiness because you're part and parcel of him, right? And it's like you can't really get it on your own doing it, trying to satisfy the material senses. You have to stop trying to satisfy the material senses. And that's not to say we're going to just give it up overnight. We know it's a process and there's other things to engage in, but then it's engaging in that devotion. And I love that it was knowledge and devotion, right? It's not just thinking about it, it's bringing it into the heart and doing the activity. And then all of a sudden Krishna's like, okay, here you go. And you're like experiencing this bliss that you've never even knew you could experience. Like even just yesterday at the temple during kirtan,
I
my
saw
daughter,
you.
yeah, yeah.
You were bliss.
Well, and it was so sweet. My daughter sometimes she's like reluctant, like she wants to do her own thing, which is that's her age. But she like started getting into kirtan and she was like dancing with me and she was singing with me, and I could see like it was just affecting her, like it was just happening. And I was like, that's what it's all about. It's like you just get swept up and you think it's just the singing and the dancing, but it's like completely different when you're doing it for the Lord. Like you're just like, I don't know, it's just different. Singing and
Yeah.
dancing is fun, but doing it for the Lord is like, it's just effortless.
Next level.
Yeah. And so it was just like so beautiful. I could see it happening in her, and that makes me really happy to see it in her. And I was experiencing it myself. But yeah, it's just like it's such a simple process, really. It's like stop trying to like chase after all these material things that you think will make you happy, even though we still do it, even when we've been in Krishna consciousness for however many years. But then when you actually go and you just do the simple devotion, which is sometimes just singing and dancing, reading, chanting, taking prasadam, you're just like, wow, I feel so happy. And it's so simple. It's so simple that we make it complicated because we don't believe it could be so simple. Like, at least
Yeah, that's the truth, right?
that's me. But yeah, when I
Yeah.
put that line, it was like when we stop engaging in sense gratification, real knowledge and engage in I'll have to go grab it and read it, but the knowledge and the devotion is what really satisfies us.
Yeah.
I have it
Sounds
right here. I found
wow.
the sentence. Unless the senses are controlled, there is no chance of elevation to the platform of knowledge. And without knowledge and devotion, there is no chance of liberation.
Yes.
Yes, Mariah?
Yes.
Yeah.
And there was just something yesterday when I read that I was like, it had a deeper realization personally because
Yeah.
this past week I had a moment of like extreme lamentation, just missing my mom a lot with Mother's Day coming up, and she's only in Florida and I can call her, but it made me realize how much I hold on to wanting those wanting those family relations in close proximity. And I was just kind of working through that, and then reading that line, I don't know, it just hit me like, yeah, I'm wanting that sense gratification of my mom being physically here, but I also have like, and I've been in a move, so I've been missing my mom, and just with Mother's Day coming up, I was like really appreciating everything I learned from her. But then like hearing that line and also going through like missing her, but then talking to her, but then showing gratitude for everything I learned from her while I'm cleaning and everything she taught me, like, I'm like getting really good at like efficiently putting my apartment away. And I learned all that from my mom. My mom was really efficient at like making things functional and keeping our house in order with 4 kids growing up. And I was just really appreciating that. And then reading that line made me realize like it's not only love and devotion for God that brings us satisfaction, but and we can still have our relationship with God right here, right now, because it's within us, right? It's beyond this physical material. It's spiritual. It's within us. It's our heart, you know. And even with my mother, with her being so far away, I was like, I still have my mother with me. Like I've still learned so much from her that she's permeating my being. Like, you know, I'm setting my house up efficiently because I learned that from her. Like, I don't know. It was like a whole thing for me. And it brought a deeper realization of like when I stopped hankering and lamenting for like these blunt physical senses of I want my mom here physically in front of me, and I go deeper into my heart, which has the gratitude and the love and the devotion and the understanding and the knowledge that she's still with me, or that Krishna's even still with us in our heart. You know, I was able to connect these two things in a way. Then I can still experience that joy even more, actually, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I experience that connection even more because I'm doing it from my heart and not from my physical senses.
Mm.
If that makes sense. It's a little hard to explain it because it was like a deeper realization in the moment, very personal, but it's hard to explain it. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
we do
Thank
it
you.
with the heart and devotion. We feel it in our whole being, you know?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Mariah. Katie, would you like to share?
Yeah, thank you. It was just making me think of a nice recent example. Um, so yesterday I went to the DC temple for like a good 4 hours just straight from work. Um, and I was having a hard time the last few days, because Mother's Day is, more of like a grieving, sad time for a lot of folks. Um, and the day before I had such a bad day that I left work, which is like extremely rare, you know?
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about like how, my inclination was wanting to like be alone and turn to vices and do more temporary sensory like fixes, But and even when I got to the temple yesterday, I was like, oh, maybe it was like 4:45. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll make it till 6, or like, oh, I really want to see Nishrimha come out of the pillar. Like, and, um, and, after like maybe 40 minutes, the ensuing 3 hours, um, were so enjoyable and so worthwhile to involve my senses in the service of Krishna and in being in association and like doing the whole Nishrimha program, which I this is my first year, like getting there on time and staying till the end, um and the benefit was so great, and I was like, this is amazing. How quickly we can be like healed and cured and helped, um and I think also, going off topic a tiny bit, like I think having such a difficult day the day before, um and such like a kind of pointedly difficult day the yesterday, encouraged me to like go, like I was like, maybe I should just go home and like have some quiet time yesterday. But I'm so glad I think I wouldn't have stuck it, like if I didn't have the um impetus of feeling like I needed it so much, I might not have stayed for the whole thing. So just another point of, Krishna provides these things that like are hard but bring us closer, bring us back. And how much more beneficial it is to try to not appease our senses with the temporary material things, and instead like really lean in and like, go to the whole program.
Make the
um
effort.
yeah, and then I was also thinking yesterday morning about like, okay, so like kind of how I can go down a lot of like analytical rabbit holes, and trying to think about different issues in my life or current situations of my own. It's a bit self. um and then I was realizing like, wait, but if I go down this mental analytical thought process thing to try to get some satisfaction, ultimately the end result is, wait, care less about that and more about Krishna consciousness. And
Yeah.
so I thought, wait a minute, I don't need to go down these rabbit holes every time. Like, I already know that the end result is gonna be Krishna, not whatever I'm trying to sort out or think they should have done this or I should have done that. And I was realizing that I feel like that's really based in faith. And I was so glad to think of that and be like, no, I have this faith that I'm realizing I don't need to go down all these thought processes of exploring and staying in my like negative emotions when I already know, such a strong feeling that my faith is real, and it's always there. It really means I don't have to do these unhelpful things in my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was also like a neat um comforting realization. Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks.
Thank you for sharing. And that's a perfect segue actually into our next point here is that scripture actually exposes the failed project of sense enjoyment for what it really is. Like when a government project fails, especially on a large scale, there's often a strategy of silence or cover up. Like the truth is hidden or reports are manipulated, potential whistleblowers are silenced. But the pursuit of sense pleasure, however, is the most heavily marketed project in material life. If we think about this, like think about like sex pleasure, for instance. Like we live in this culture that is hypersexualized. People are constantly bombarded like images and messages that artificially simulate the senses and create these inflated expectations. Hollywood has sold us this idea of happily ever after. We're often portraying it as something superficial and fleeting. Romance, it's shown as this rush of passion, this physical attraction, finding someone who magically completes you. You think of all of this like hype that we're sold just living in this culture, how this false project. And over the years for myself, my own idea of a perfect relationship has evolved. I think originally I bought into this Hollywood style fantasy, something that's like super exciting, and up and down. And I feel like in my 20s it was like relationship to relationship because that was my mentality of like, I needed that super exciting thing. But as I get older and as I study this more, as my priorities even change and I'm wanting to live a more God-centered life, my idea shifts from something that's, from Hollywood to something that's more like grounded and real. A relationship that isn't about completing myself, but about two people who share values, who know what they want in life and who are committed to making God the center as they grow together. So it's not just passion, but partnership, not just chemistry, but shared purpose. A support system rooted in something deeper than external attraction. Because when a relationship is based on superficial desires or externals, it eventually becomes a game of trying to get the other person to meet your needs and bend to your preferences. That's what happens, right? When we're focused on externals and everything's based on just our own personal enjoyment and sense gratification. Even a relationship becomes a game of trying to get the other person to meet our needs, right? To bend to our preferences. And then after enough disappointments and unresolved conflicts, it breaks down. And then the cycle begins for a new relationship after new relationship, which is exhausting and leaves you feeling disillusioned. So this is what happens when you buy in to this, to all this marketing, to this image that culture likes to create, that you're here to enjoy. And that's what we think of all the marketing that it is. It's getting at that enjoy mentality inside of people and exploiting that. And if we buy into that, this is just like kind of an example in my own life of how these things can kind of bring us down. We have all these false expectations and we spend our lives chasing them, and we just end up in this cycle, this roller coaster ride of ups and downs. So instead of chasing this illusion, choose to build something real. Find someone who shares your values and vision. Learn to sacrifice your own desires for the good of others, right? Apply these spiritual principles. Learn to sacrifice your own desires for the good of others. Learn to let someone do that for you. And most importantly, in whatever it is, a relationship or whatever it is, use it as a way to move closer to God. Use it to support your God-centered mission. Right? And that is how you plug into source. That's how you experience that ultimate fulfillment and happiness. Because a relationship or anything that's centered on God, it's not only enduring, it's the whole point. And it's not about escaping into each other. It's about walking each other home. So whatever it is that for me, my whole life, it was these relationships, these approval. If you can try to make it God-centered, you can actually be enduring, and you can actually experience that love and connection that you have been chasing your whole life, but through God, right? Not through the bending of another person to meet your, ideal of what they should or shouldn't be to make you happy so that you can enjoy most. So that's kind of an example of how we can take what society tells us, and if we dive fully into it, it can easily lead to our demise. And so we have to use this guidebook, this map, to get ourselves out of this matrix, get ourselves out of this maze, and use what we have to live a God-centered life. And that's like the secret out, and also the secret in. Right? In here, though. And so in this verse, the Gita explains that the wise person recognizes that the pleasure derived from the senses is fleeting, and it can lead to bondage, whereas true happiness is found in spiritual practice and self-realization. The idea is that indulging in sensory pleasures can distract us from our higher purpose and spiritual well-being, because they're impermanent, and they often lead to greater dissatisfaction in the long run, like the example that I just talked about. So the Gita encourages us to transcend these fleeting pleasures and find deeper, more permanent joy through devotion, through self-control, through connection with the divine. And just like Katie was talking about, we have these desires for entertainment or emotional connection. And we often invest so much time and energy into just this external world trying to satisfy these things. But even these desires can be spiritualized. Like we have these characters in stories like Harry Potter or Star Wars or Mickey Mouse, things that we enjoy for their fantasy and escapism. And they're not inherently spiritual, but we can spiritualize that desire for those experiences. Why not channel these desires towards something that connects us to the spirit and makes us feel more whole? And that's what's so beautiful about this practice. And what Katie was even kind of testifying to. It's like you go to the temple, Katie and Mariah, it's like a whole experience. All of the senses are satisfied, but they're satisfied by connecting with God, by putting God at the center. And that's the difference. If God's at the center, it's actually fulfilling. It's actually substantial. It's actually enduring. Whereas if it's not, if things like, Harry Potter or a relationship or whatever, your fantasy or escape, your drug of choice to escape or to fantasize, whatever it is at the center, it's either going to lead to a dead end, best case scenario, dead end, worst case scenario, demise. So why not choose to connect to something higher, to get that entertainment, that emotional connection, to fulfill that desire through something higher? through something that actually has deeper meaning. We can develop a connection. We can develop that connection and we can cultivate a taste for spiritual fulfillment. Because it's natural. Everyone has that natural longing for something fantastical. But if we can seek that connection in God, like Mariah was saying, it's a beautiful thing. And this is what wise people do. Wise people find their joy in a relationship with God, knowing that this true fulfillment comes from aligning with the source of all joy. So, through this practice, our consciousness becomes purified and we experience this supreme joy. That's the other thing, your senses are satisfied, your desires are satisfied. But when you put God at the center and you satisfy your senses through that, what happens is your consciousness becomes purified. And that's the difference. You put your consciousness in Harry Potter, it's not becoming purified. But you put your consciousness in this, your senses are satisfied, but your consciousness becomes purified. And that's how you experience supreme joy. If you seek this pleasure from mere indulgence, it will ultimately lead to misery. Don't forget our analogy, our FIT analogy, right? That's how seeking pleasure from the world around us. That's what happens when we seek pleasure from the world around us, FIT. But by performing austerity, one can achieve unlimited happiness. And how does it work? Why do we need austerity? Why do I use that word? Because in this transitional stage, when we're weaning from this material pleasure and we're seeking spiritual pleasure, it's a struggle, and even like Katie, in your example, you're kind of demonstrating that, it's a struggle. We have one foot in, one foot out, where sometimes we have to kind of push ourselves to go and spend time, at the temple or in the association of like-minded people, because we have a natural default to just maybe isolate or to, Netflix binge, right? So it's an austerity. We have to do that. But if we can do that, if we can go through the struggle and weather the storm, we move further and we experience real spiritual happiness. That's exactly what Katie was saying in her example. We are like this disease condition. In a disease condition, a person cannot enjoy the period of treatment. It's a period of austerity. So it's not like everything's going to be so blissful and all the time. No, you might have to talk yourself in to take in the treatment. You may have to kind of amp yourself up to take the medicine. But by coming to these classes, by arming your consciousness with this protective layer, when those times come, when you're in a low spot, when you're struggling, you both have the knowledge to get out and the wherewithal, because you've constantly been coating your consciousness with this knowledge, such that you can pull yourself out, and not you, but you can reach your hand up and God can help. And that's the difference. So one who follows this austerity, they can experience happiness. So we're about out of time, but as we wrap up today, I want to again encourage you to reflect on your own experience with sense pleasure and ask yourself, how often do we chase after things that may seem fulfilling in the moment, but leave us feeling empty or craving more once they're gone? And understand that the Gita teaches us to recognize the impermanence of such pleasures and invites us to seek pleasure in something deeper, in this spiritual fulfillment, this rooted in connection with God. Because as many of us have experienced and should, try to remember our experiences, kind of keep these at the forefront of our memory, true happiness doesn't come from external validation or fleeting pleasures. True happiness comes from cultivating that inner peace and joy, but by aligning with our higher purpose, by practicing self-discipline. We can experience this lasting contentment that Krishna is speaking of here. So let's strive to be wise, to discern the futility of temporary pleasures, and to embrace the path that leads to real enduring happiness. And that's all that I have for you guys today. Just a pop quiz right before we leave. Can anybody repeat the FIT, what FIT stands for?
Futile, insubstantial, and temporary.
Great. So anytime you're feeling pulled in a direction, that maybe you get a little bit of a sign like, oh, this isn't good for you. Maybe you don't. But just come back to that acronym. and ask yourself, does this fit into this category? And if it does, just, what's that? Control Alt. What's that when you backspace, when you jump back? Or is it Control Z? Control Z. Just undo. Just get out and connect to source. So thank you all for coming. Does anybody want to share any last thing before we leave today?
I had one little thing come into mind. Katie G shared, and then you shared how, the Gita exposes like these negative thoughts. You didn't say negative thoughts, but or like the temporary attachments that we create. And then, you're talking about how our material desires, it's like we're conditioned to fall back into them, and are these sense pleasures. And it's like, I remember one time going through a phase where I was just like down and distraught. And someone was like, "You're addicted to being sad." And I was like, "What?" Like, what do you mean? Why would I be addicted to being sad? But it's true. Like eating, thinking that, isolating and separating ourselves from people, and even that becomes a sense pleasure. It's like a negative sense pleasure, but it still becomes like a pattern we develop that is giving us some sort of something. We're getting something from it. And so, sense pleasure doesn't always mean things that we give ourselves to make us happy. Sometimes it's like sometimes we need to take the time to experience our sadness, but sometimes we can be like I was like addicted to like overly thinking and like creating these negative feelings in my mind, and like I couldn't accept what had happened. I couldn't let go of what had happened. I was like addicted to it. And someone said that to me, and I was like, that made me angry, but I realized because it's true. Like, and yeah, so not trying to expose anyone, but just food for thought there.
Yeah, thank you. When we're trying to enjoy or lament independent of God, whatever we're doing, if it's not connected with God, it's not gonna satisfy us or even be a band-aid long term. Yeah, thank you. Anybody else before we go?
Just thank you, and thank you, Mariah, because you're just always dropping truths that help me a lot. Thank you all. Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming, and thanks for participating and sharing your hearts. It really makes this enriching for everybody on the call and for everybody who listens after too. So thanks for coming. I'll see you. Oh, I should say, I'm not going to be here on Thursday because I'm going to the Holy Name Retreat at New Vrindavan. So we'll be off Thursday, but then we'll be back Monday. Okay. Thank you all.
Haribo.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Have a great week.
Thank